Good morning! My name is Derry, and today I'm going to be drawing Sakuna from Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, I don't really have a topic to discuss with you all today, so I'm mostly just going to be talking about the piece, as that's a lot easier and requires much less brain power for me. Now, when figuring out how to do the Sakuna piece, first of all, I just wanted to say the whole reason I was doing it was because Echo suggested I did it on Twitter. It's hard for me to come up with ideas on what subject I want to draw every day, so getting recommendations every now and then can be really nice for me and give me a good sense of direction, or be a sprouting place for me to just really navigate and figure out what I'm interested in doing that day. In this case, today it was Sakuna. A character I'm not the biggest fan of, but I think has a very powerful presence, and I love his position within the context of the story he's in. Now, as I'm not personally super invested into Sakuna, I will say I have seen the first 2 seasons of Jujutsu Kaisen, which he is from. And, I don't want to really give any spoilers for the series, so I'm just going to talk about the role of Sakuna from the get-go and my thoughts on it for now. Sakuna is set up as this very grandiose villain, all the way from the beginning of episode 1, which... some light spoilers for the first few episodes. So if you haven't seen them yet, you might as well just mute me for the rest of the video and go ahead and watch them and have a good time. Jujutsu Kaisen's a very fun beat-em-up shonen. But Sakuna, from the very beginning, is set up to be portrayed as this powerful threat, this demon of demons, an overwhelming force that wants to bring the world back into ruin. And unfortunately, one of his fingers is found within this school. Now, one of his fingers is found. What does that mean? Long story short, I'm hoping you would have seen it already, but his fingers, when consumed by a person or a demon, will amplify their power and bring them to corruption. In this case, Yuji Itadori eats one of the fingers and Sukuna gets put inside him. And they kind of share the body. Now, this is where I think the dynamic is the most interesting. You have this very overpowering figure, this threat to the world, stored within this high schooler's body that only means to do well. I think Yuji Itadori is the kind of person to go to therapy and try to help the therapist with their problems. So having, this overwhelming threat of nature, Sakuna, stored within him it's an interesting dichotomy to see in the show. As well as that, characters are constantly debating whether or not Yuji should be put down because he has Sakuna in him. Now, I'm a big fan of that dichotomy. You see it all over media from past to present. It's common with the Curse of the Werewolf lycanthropes. It's also very prevalent within Marvel. The Incredible Hulk is a good example of sharing multiple, people within one body, one host. And the different ways to tackle it, I find very interesting. It's also really appealing when the consciousnesses of both of the individuals are able to interact with each other. It gives a lot more friction. For example, throughout the series, Sakuna wants to have full reign of Yuji Itadori's body, and Yuji wants to keep him suppressed and help rid the world of curses. As a result, they're constantly butting heads, and whenever Sakuna gets some freedom, he makes an impact on screen. And that kind of spectacle is very fascinating to see. And whenever he's able to really let loose in the show, especially in moments within season 2, I won't go into any details, but it's very overwhelming, as you would expect from season 1. It's nice to see promises possibly delivered, and it's very fascinating to see the duality of this relationship. And I think I kind of personally, as a viewer, find that to be the most interesting aspect of Yuji Itadori. That relationship between him and Sakuna. I think Yuji Itadori is an okay protagonist. he doesn't really stand out a lot for me because he doesn't seem to have a lot of agency in his own life. Maybe that changes after season 2, but from the first 2 seasons, all the way from the setup, he's been more of like an obedient dog doing as he's told. And I hope to see him stray from that and kind of have his own initiative. There are probably examples of where he strays on his own, but from my observations, he's not proactive enough for a protagonist in my eyes. And I don't have the greatest time watching him on screen either. I think his design's pretty fun, but he seems like a good-intentioned person, but without the depth I enjoy. And don't get me wrong, I am a sucker for good-natured characters that do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. You know, very Boy Scouty, very, yes, I want to help people because it's great. And if he didn't have that archetype, I would probably not have any... well, he doesn't have that archetype. But if he didn't have that good nature anyways of trying to be nice to people at all, it would make the dichotomy between him and Sakuna way less appealing. So I think that, you know, contrast between the two of them is the driving interest for the protagonist. And I definitely think Jujutsu Kaisen is one of those series that does a wonderful job of building out their cast. There's so many beloved characters and someone for everyone, which is always nice to see. I know there is like a million people just completely absorbed with Gojo. He really takes the spotlight of the show. He is a very powerful force and very entertaining to see on screen. My personal favorite character from the series is, I keep forgetting his actual name, but I call him Boogie Woogie because that's his signature move, and he's just always a delight to appear. I also really like the panda boxing guy for obvious reasons. He's just really fun. And he punches people. It's very simple and straightforward. And, you know, having that simplicity is very nice when the rest of the cast within the series has super complex powers that I feel like I have to pause and, you know, get a PhD in just really be super sophisticated myself to understand what they're saying half the time. It can sometimes ruin the fights for me because they are a super unbalanced, overpowered clashing. Yet there is rules that they play around. And what I find interesting in a power system and a magic system is the rules that define what they can and cannot do. And Jujutsu Kaisen approaches it in a very unique way where they have this very complex rule system laid out, and every character within every fight is constantly analyzing and strategizing how they're going to take down their opponent, which is pretty unique. I think a lot of times there's usually a dumbed down character and other characters kind of spectate and watch. Jujutsu Kaisen attempts to make it feel a lot more hands-on. And whether it succeeds or not, well, I think the numbers show that it does quite well. A lot of people get very entranced by it. It just goes over my head sometimes. I gotta whine to my friend and go like, hey, what does this mean? And then he simply says, oh, it means this, and then proceeds to, you know, give me this brick of an explanation, and then sums it up immediately after with a quick sentence explaining, he manipulates distances between people. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. So yes, I think Jujutsu Kaisen is a really fun anime with a very interesting setup and fun to watch fights. I think there's a chance you will enjoy it if you enjoy shonen fighting. I will say, if you're not a big fan of drawn out fights, it can get on the tedium at times, but season 2 was one of those bigger examples of a long clash where season 1 was a lot more broken up, and I was told that there's a lot of different arcs with different kind of pacings and conflicts. So, you know, I think it's got a little bit for everyone in a way. But it does know its demographic, and it's very much catering towards it. And yeah, with this Sakuna piece, I wanted to do a fixation on fingers, because that's a strong symbolism for his character. and I, used that to kind of frame it a bit more. I got some advice to kind of throw in some lightning to make it look a bit more dramatic. I think it was wonderful advice. I think it looks much more dramatic now. And I mainly just wanted to play with these red colors. It just felt like a fun time. Alright, well that's all for me. Good morning. Take care. Goodbye.